Good evening, welcome to the Planning Applications Committee. Apologies for absence. Marcy Skeet, and can I thank Dennis Pierce for substituting tonight? Thank you, at such short notice. Declarations of pecuniary interest, anybody? Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting, all agreed? Thank you. Just for non-public information, the way we operate is that agenda items will be introduced by officers at the outset, and then we will move to objectors and their agent. If you are speaking, you will be given 3 minutes. If there are 2 objectors, you will get 6 minutes together, which means the agent will have the equivalent amount of time. We have a traffic light system here, so when it goes to orange, it means we've got 1 minute left. So it would be really helpful if you could bear that in mind and try and bring your piece to an end before it goes to red. Just to let you know that this meeting is being filmed for subsequent broadcast on the Council's website, and during the meeting the plans will be shown on the screen, and these will be captured by the recording alongside the audio recording. There will be no visual recordings of this of people present. In the past we did have a webcam, and it meant that people might not be happy about appearing on these videos, but it will only be your voice. So if you've got any queries, you could speak to one of the team up here if you've got a problem with that. The order of the agenda tonight, because of those people who are speaking, is agenda item 6, and then 7, followed by 5, and 8, and then 9. That will be the order of the agenda. So our first application that we're going to consider, agenda item 6, is 5 Bewley Street.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is located at Bewley Street in Colliers Wood and comprises a modern residential development with a mixture of houses and flats. The specific buildings relating to the application are blocks 3, 5 and 7. The site surrounding is largely residential with the River Wandle to the east and business units to the north. The proposal itself is for alterations to the existing roof above flat blocks 3, 5 and 7 to create 7 one-bed flats. 3 flats would be created in block 3, 2 in block 5 and 2 in block 7. The external alterations proposed would be pitch roof door windows and roof lights. Each living dining area for each flat would be served by 2 door windows. The roof pitch would not be altered to accommodate the flats, and the flats would be accessed via extension of existing internal staircase. The proposal will also include provision of cycle storage and now additional bin storage. So talking you through the plans, this is the proposed floor plan for above block 3, so for 3 flats. As I said, they're all 1-bedroom flats. You just see the bits jutting out, which is where the door windows are. So 3 1-bedroom flats there. 2 1-bedroom flats above block 5, and 2 above block 7. The roof plan just showing you the door windows from aerial view, and here. As you notice in the planning history, you'll see that there's been actually a recent refusal for one of the flats to do 2 door windows on its own, separate for this application, for further habitable space. However, that was turned down for reasons of visual amenity, given it was on its own. Turn to the elevations. As you can see, looking at roof level, door windows, and some roof lights also proposed. And again there. And block 3, again there. Turn to site photographs. This is block 3 here. So, using the existing roof void here. Block 7 is here. Block 5 is there, and block 7 is here on the right. Again, block 7 here, 5. So door windows will be in the roof voids here and here. Some existing bin storage facilities on site already. There's one there, and there's one back here. This is behind block 3. The proposal does include additional cycle storage facility and bin storage facility now on the amended plan to go here. So the proposal does include removing some tree and shrub cover here. We are, on a landscaping scheme, to ask for additional landscaping to help mitigate that. However, that is a negative aspect of the scheme, but it's to be weighed in the balance of the proposal. And we just view further back on Bewley Street, and this is already here. So I'm just turning attention to the mod sheet very briefly. You'll see the amended plan at the top there, with some revised wording condition 6 and also 3 proposed additional conditions. Overall, members' proposal would make use of an existing roof void. Proposal would include provision of cycle storage and bin storage, which would benefit proposed and existing residents. Provision of 7 flats on the site is not considered to result in a significant effect on the surrounding highway network or on-street parking. Proposal has been subject to amendments during the assessment following officer advice, which has resulted in a reduction in the width of the door windows to make them visually acceptable and to provide increased bin storage facilities. Appropriate conditions are recommended to capture the construction process and hours of work, and overall proposal recommended for approval, subject to conditions and applicant entering into a legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
And Matthew Lukes, if that's how you say the name.
Thank you. I'm an owner and occupier at apartment 9 and 5 Bewley Street and speak in opposition to the application. The planning committee has already been made aware of many of the concerns of 14 residents at Bewley Street about the proposed development. Having liaised with other owners in our block, I wanted to distill our objections to 3 main points. Firstly, the committee will be aware that planning permission has already been refused to a near identical expansion into the roof above apartment 5, 3 Bewley Street, as it would be out of keeping and detrimental to the character of Bewley Street. These reasons appear to be equally in place in this application, and no reason for this discrepancy has been given. The only support to this application came from the owners of apartment 15, 3 Bewley Street, the owners of the rejected application, who have a vested interest in the outcome. Secondly, little consideration appears to be given to the impact of the build on existing residents. Whilst the planning officer has recommended that the build operate only during restricted build hours, many residents, including myself, are resident during the day, including working from home, as recorded in representations. With construction in the roof, it's reasonable to expect that noise would affect all residents, scaffolding would obscure natural light and generate dust. We're also concerned that no thought has been given to the location of building services, skips and vehicles required for the build, given the lack of available parking spaces, as detailed in my next point. Thirdly, we do not consider that the addition of 7 new flats in Bewley Street would be sustainable in terms of parking and refuse management. As has been raised in many of the representations, parking is extremely limited on Bewley Street. All spaces in the existing car park are allocated and owned by existing flats, and as such are unavailable to parking even when unoccupied. The remaining roadway has no more than 11 spaces between double yellow lines and a narrow bend. The parking survey conducted by the applicant indicated that parking stress was high during the survey time, even though it was conducted in the middle of the night. Our experience is that parking stress is even greater during the day. Whilst we note that the proposed Section 106 agreement states that no parking permits will be available to residents of the planned flats, we can't understand how this would be effective, considering that Bewley Street doesn't require permits. Unable to park in the surrounding areas, new residents would have no alternative but to park on Bewley Street, making the issue of parking even worse. In addition, there's no provision in the plans to increase the refuse facilities, or there wasn't at the time of writing this. We don't believe that there was enough capacity to absorb rubbish from 7 additional flats. Finally, look, we really appreciate the Council's desire to meet its target for new homes. We hope this will not allow you to overlook the justified concerns held by numerous residents over how this proposed development will affect them and allow it to continue with any cost. Thank you.
John Morden.
Other residents of Block 5 that own flats there have the following concerns regarding the desirability and affordability of the new flats this proposal creates for Blocks 5 and 7. Firstly, the dormer windows overlooking the car park are either the same size as or properly in line with the uniform windows directly below them in the remaining block. This is neither aesthetically pleasing nor in keeping with the existing development. Secondly, the ceiling heights included in the revised floor plan submitted by the developer imply that the internal apex of the roof space is at 3.1 metres. When you compare this to the original building plans included in their building elevation in their proposal, from a visual inspection, the roof apex is more or less in line with the top floor of the French windows in the existing part of Block 5 that is building at the 4th floor level. The developer is using this to suggest that the fourth floor habitation is possible, but ignores the fact that the roof on that half of the block is 7 feet above where it exists on the rest of blocks 5 and 7. And those windows that the roof is approximately level with are only a little over 2 metres high, not 3.1. So how can the flats going in possibly meet the government recommended aims for ceiling height and floor space? The floors and ceilings that separate the top floor flats from the loft spaces are also not solid. All of the top floor flats contain loft hatches that go into the loft spaces, and there is no sort of insulation or anything that goes along with it. So any building work that goes into those loft spaces to construct any sorts of flats is going to be incredibly disruptive and noisy for the flats immediately below them. It might even be conceivable that you can't actually live in those top floor flats whilst they're attaching the flats on top of it. I would also like to note that there are currently 50 flats on site at Bewley Street, and the original plans for the bike store only contained enough bikes for 21 residents. How can those bike slots be possibly allocated fairly evenly within the existing residents? I would also like to point out that these flats are going into an existing block which has its own covenant that the flats have to become part of. They're required to join the same management company that we use, and are subject to exactly the same share of the charges that they all have. Only these flats will have one fewer bedroom and be paying effectively a disproportionate portion of the management fee. Thank you.
Patterson, please.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'd like to cover 4 main areas: the design of the proposal, the amenity of neighbouring residents, and the impacts on waste and storage and car and cycle parking. Touching on design, throughout the application process, the applicant has taken on board feedback from officers as well as the comments submitted by neighbours. It's for this reason that amended drawings were submitted by the applicant, which reduced the scale and proportions of the proposed dormers. The dormers are now small in scale and would sit comfortably in the roof space of each block. They would have a pitched tile roof to match the existing roof and windows to match the existing blocks. Officers have confirmed that the design of the proposals is considered to be an appropriate architectural response in keeping with the existing buildings. In terms of amenity of neighbouring residents, the issue of noise between the proposed flats and existing flats on lower floors has been raised by the neighbouring residents. This matter is addressed under Part E of the building regulations. In order to comply with the most up-to-date building regulations, the design will need to provide a floor build-up that achieves a very high level of noise reduction from airborne and impact sound. Given the age of the existing buildings, the new floor build-up will be higher performance than that which currently exists between the original flats on lower floors. In terms of disturbance during construction, planning permission cannot be withheld solely on the grounds that construction may cause disturbance to neighbouring occupiers. The construction period will be temporary, although it is accepted that it may cause some disruption to residents. However, contractors will be expected to adopt measures to control noise and dust and vibration emissions, as well as adopting sensible working hours. In terms of car parking, the proposed scheme is car-free. The planning application was accompanied by a parking survey which followed the Lambeth Council parking survey methodology, and which demonstrated that any additional parking demand from the development would be comfortably accommodated within the surrounding highway network. The Council's Highways Officer has reviewed this and raised no highways objection. Notwithstanding this, the applicant has agreed to enter into a legal agreement to prevent future residents from obtaining car parking permits. The proposals will have no demonstrable impact on local car parking conditions. In terms of the waste store, the applicant has listened to the concerns of existing residents who consider that there's currently insufficient space for waste storage. To this end, the proposals have been amended to ensure additional waste storage can be accommodated. There's now space for 10 360 litre bins providing storage for general waste, food waste, paper recycling and mixed recycling. This is in excess of the policy compliant amount of refuse storage space for residents of the new units. In addition to this, the proposals will provide 18 cycle parking spaces. This additional cycle parking is far in excess of the policy compliant 7 cycle parking spaces, and this will provide new, secure and weatherproof cycle parking for the benefit of existing residents. To conclude, we are passionate and strongly believe in these proposals, which represent a windfall development that will make a small but valuable contribution to the borough's housing stock. Given the constrained nature of the site, developing within pre-existing housing blocks, the mix of one-bed units is considered to be entirely appropriate. Each residential unit comfortably exceeds the National Internal Space Standards and will be dual aspect with plenty of natural light and ventilation. Accordingly, it is considered that the open standard of accommodation will be high.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify a few things. The refusal of the scheme, which was submitted on its own, which was for, I don't know which flat number it was, but within Block 3, that was deemed considered unacceptable because it was just for that flat on its own. So what we were looking at was, is those dormer windows on their own acceptable on that corner with that building? And actually we felt that they weren't. Obviously the applicant's now for that, looking pending the outcome of this to consider resubmitting. In terms of noise, yes, there will inevitably be noise disturbance from the construction process. We have to apply the appropriate condition, restricting the hours. In terms of the insulation, that will be covered under the building control process. In terms of parking, yes, they've done a survey which our transport officer has looked at. It is showing that there will be a demand for about, I think, 4 cars created from these 7 flats. Each flat on the site already does have its own parking space for these 3 blocks. But we have to look at the wider impact of the 7 flats without on-street parking, off-site parking. And it's not deemed to be significant. The dormer windows have been reduced in size to make them more visually acceptable to the building. They were wider originally submitted. Cycle parking, so they are proposing the cycle parking you can see here. The requirement for them would be to provide 7, but they are providing 18 now. Following the concerns from the objectors, they have now submitted an amended plan to increase the bin storage facilities as well. So it increases it by about a third in comparison to the two blocks there already. So that is, Chair.
Questions? Councillor Dean. No, Councillor Dean. Sorry.
How many floors will there be in this new block if this proposal is passed? And is there a current lift at the moment?
Sorry, Councillor Dean, how many floors are proposed?
How many floors will there be in this building if this proposal goes through? What's there at the moment? 3 or 4? I'm asking 2 specific questions.
Yeah, so it'll be the 5th floor.
It'll be the 5th floor. And is there, and the reason for my question is there a lift in the current building?
There is, but they're not proposing to extend the lift for this application.
Yes,
they're proposing just internal staircase.
Which is not in the paper, therefore that's why I asked a specific question. In terms of, just furthermore on that one, is there a current sprinkler system? And furthermore, is there going to be a sprinkler system in the 5th floor?
I don't know if there's a current sprinkler system installed at the moment, but that would be captured on the building control stage for these 7 new flats.
Councillor Latif.
Thank you, Chair. Has a construction management plan been submitted, one that specifically highlights the noise issues during construction?
No, it hasn't. What we have done is apply on the conditions on the modification sheet. Condition 9 proposed. We're looking to capture construction management plan under that condition there on the modification sheet.
Any other questions? Councillor Southgate.
This is with reference to the floor plans. I'm looking, it's not actually page numbered, but the question is about the usable space. I mean, I appreciate that the flats meet the minimum required floor area under the London plan for anyone of a height of 1.5 metres or less. But have I understood this correctly, that the 2.3 metre ceiling height is only, for example, in Block 3 Flat 1, that's 28.5 square metres?
Sorry, can you clarify that again?
I'm asking a question about the proportion or the area of each flat that meets the required height standard of 2.3 metres, and it's mostly around 75–76%. Yeah?
Yeah.
So what happens with the remaining 25%? Do you need to crouch down to get in there, or?
So yeah, that is you could say, disbenefit to the flats, that they're obviously making use of using roof for. So naturally, there is going to be some aspects of the roof coming down within the flats. So we acknowledge that they are small flats, but given what they're showing here and on other floor plans, we are happy they are compliant. I think to remember they are top floor as well, so the outlook from the dormer windows would be good. There's 2 dormer windows for each living room space for each flat. Most of the bedrooms have dormer windows, apart from this block, I believe, have just Velux windows for the bedrooms for this block. But yeah, we're happy that they are compliant with the current standards.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Ward.
Regarding parking, the area is currently not part of a controlled parking zone, and the proposal is that if at some point in the future there were to be a controlled parking zone, the residents of these additional flats would not be eligible to get parking permits to park in that zone. What about the existing flats in the first 4 stories? As it says in 2.1, a 4-storey development adding 1 storey on top, which I read from my papers. The 4 floors below, with those people, should it become a controlled parking zone, be eligible for passes? Thank you.
Any comments? Councillor Deacon.
One last question is, do they have any private off-street parking currently in this particular building?
Yes, so for blocks 3, 5 and 7 there is 1 space allocated here and down here for each flat.
My comment would be that they won't be part of the controlled parking zone, and they won't be stopped from having a permit for the off-street parking because it's private land. So it's not to do with public realm at all. Comment. So I'm not on questions. That's a comment. Right. You can't stop them having a parking space on private land, which is what this is.
Any other comments? Councillor Southgate.
Yes, if we're on to comments, I mean, I appreciate that the GIA is determined by floor area, but I'd never dreamed that it didn't also measure or take into account the ability to stand in your own flat. It doesn't take the grandpa of Homer Simpson to realise that one day you're going to hop out of bed and go wham against the ceiling. And I find it really quite extraordinary that this has come this far, without somebody saying, hang on, we're surely talking about the effective volume of the flat, not just the fact we can measure it out on the floor and ignore the fact that at normal height, some 25% is below the minimum standards required in the London plan. So I've never come across this before, actually. I think it's amazing that we should countenance approving this.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, these are very small. They're smaller than the legal limit for one-bedroom flats. They're just about above the legal limit for studios. And as Councillor Southgate says, if you take away the areas where you can't stand up in, you're a quarter below. So you're talking about the very smallest apartments having 75% in the very smallest apartments. The fact that the lift doesn't reach up there, at the moment, there may or may not be sprinklers. The off-street parking is a red herring because it's got private parking. And I think there's a tremendous strength amongst the residents that this is going to affect them significantly. There are compromises in every single apartment, and as much as we're saying that we need to find space for new homes, there has to be a level of decency for the individuals having to live there. And I think that this really does need to go back, and each apartment needs to be large enough for people to be able to stand in the area which is the legal limit. And I just don't think this is doing it. There's just too many compromises. I think it's unacceptable for us to pass it for people to live there.
Thank you. I think we know that there is housing pressure across the borough and a need for more housing, and there is a need across the board for more large family houses, more small two-bedroom flats, one-bedroom flats and studios. There's a need for housing across the board. I speak as someone who, in my earlier single life, both rented and bought really small bed-sits apartments, small studio flats, and then slightly larger flats. And to be honest, for the market, this is, I would assume, aimed at young single people, just a single resident, which are unlikely to own a car, and will be perfectly happy in a flat of this size as a first flat to buy or rent. I think it's a perfectly good addition to the housing need for Merton, where we do need more family homes, but we also need more small flats for single people. And I think I don't see any material reason to refuse this application, and we should allow it in an area which is already full of relatively small flats with people living in them and not having that many cars, as shown from the parking survey, etc. I mean, I think there isn't a good reason to refuse this, and it would be welcome to the very borders of the ward I represent.
Well, I'm going to propose a refusal, actually. I entirely take on board what Councillor Ward said about the need for more housing, the need for more small units too, but it just seems to me utterly wrong that we should be allowing flats where the effective area is some 25%, we could go through the figures here, below the London plan stipulations, and I'm going to suggest we refuse. There isn't actually, I can't find a policy that says you should be able to stand up in your own flat. So the nearest I can get under DMD2 is ensure provision of appropriate levels of daily sunlight, quality of living conditions. And quite honestly, if you have to crouch, that is not an acceptable quality of living.
Second? You're going to second that? Okay. If there are any other comments?
This is a complete one. The Gherkin in London had exactly the same problem, that 20% of its area wasn't usable because it's curved, and it went to court, and the tenants won the case that 20% was not usable, so the agents then just took away 20% of the area and said this is the actual gross internal area. So that's just a comment. That's what we should be doing in this instance as well.
Any other comments? Councillor Macon.
I think I'm not backtracking because I'm still trying to get my head around the non-parking for the residents of this side. If it's not a controlled parking zone at the moment, and I understand it's on private land, but if it's a non-parking zone, if it's not a parking zone in that road at the moment, then how can we restrict them from having a permit if it becomes a parking zone? I don't think we can. And that's the problem. I'm not sure you can do that. I may be wrong, but and equally, because it's not a zone at the moment, therefore everybody can park in that road anyway. So it only becomes a problem if there is a zone and the people there who live in the road can't actually park there because they're not going to be allowed a permit. Can the transport plan office answer that?
Chair, it is unlikely to be a CPZ zone because there wasn't any demand for that. Having said that, there is a restrictions for avoid the commuter parking between Monday to Friday, 7 to 10 a.m. There should be parking. There are restrictions within the site to avoid the commuter parking. There's currently parking restrictions are there now.
Do you want to say anything further about space standards? Recommendation to refuse on DMD2 quality of living conditions. Can I see those in favour of that, please? Seven. Those against? We'll go on at one. Then the application is refused on that basis.
Sorry, Chair, can we just be clear on the reasons again? So it's the space standards that we're talking about, the internal space standards. Clearly high. Now, obviously parking was mentioned as well. Is that something members want to pursue, or is the answer with the traffic officer sufficient?
Well, I think the recommendation didn't cover parking. The recommendation was just about quality of living standard, and I think that's probably sufficient. Do you think? Sorry, I can't hear you.
Under DMD2, it's policy of clause 5, provision appropriate levels of sunlight and daylight, quality of living conditions. So that's
We now move on to agenda item 7, which is 1 to 5 Carnegie Place. Can I ask if Hilary Maltino is here? Okay, she's not.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is located to the east of Parkside, Wimbledon. Actually, I'm on the green here on this plan. Site is currently a construction site and used to contain 5 dwellings. The site's surroundings consist of other residential plots in the Kevin to the north. The application itself is for a variation of condition to the drawing numbers condition of the planning permission for the redevelopment to provide 6 dwellings. The variation proposed is to include larger basements to all dwellings on the site and has been previously granted under the previous permission. The basement accommodation provides additional living space for each dwelling. Talking you through the plans, so this is the site plans. The position and the layout of the development is exactly the same as the previous scheme. So the previous scheme included the basements as shown here, which largely followed the ground floor layout above. So the proposed basement, so essentially proposing to square it off, so rather than have any interlinked bits where there isn't a basement, so that each dwelling will actually have a squared off basement. So that is what's proposed. Everything above ground is the same in terms of design of the dwellings. So these are the dwellings that were previously approved, so they remain the same. This is showing the tree protection plan. So in light blue, hopefully you can see the outline light blue where the proposed basement would be compared to the previous one in the dark blue. And that's a site picture from my officer on site. As I say, currently construction site implementing the previous permission. In terms of the technical aspects, the applicant has updated the technical reports for the new basement sizes, and these have been reviewed by the council's structural engineer, flood risk officer and tree officer, who are satisfied with additional detail subject to conditions. The previously agreed section 106 agreement remains in place with this permission and the clauses within it. Officers therefore recommend permission be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As Hilary Martino isn't present, I'm afraid, Mr. Tocalti, is that you? No. Yeah. Won't have an opportunity to speak. Okay. So I move to questions, please. No questions? Yeah. Councillor Chief.
Thank you, Chair. Just quick. How much extra are they enlarging the basement from the original?
Chair, I don't have a percentage to hand, but it does result in basements for each plot being less than 50% of the garden per se under the policy. So just a comparison here really. So the basement plan is the top floor, which has been previously approved on this side. Essentially they're squaring off, you see at the top here, so it squares off around to form a simple rectangle in terms of the construction. So as I said, they have updated their technical reports and submitted it with this application. You'll see the application has been with us a while, and the reason for the delay was actually looking to get these updated reports, which the applicants have now done, submitted to us and have been reviewed by our technical people.
Councillor Makin. It's not happening, is it? It's the green one in front. No? Silver one in front of the green one. No. Try again. The silver one in... Keeps coming on, it might something to do with that.
Yeah, it's on there. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yes. How do you get access to the basements? There's no clear plan in the design here.
So yeah, there's the top part here is actually where the gardens would be. So there are some external staircase accesses into the basement, and also obviously internally as well.
Any other questions? No? Councillor Pearce?
You'll have to forgive me, but I can't see that, and the dimensions on this are almost unreadable unless I've got a magnifying glass. So, can you give me a rough or even a more accurate idea of how much smaller the basement area is than the ground plan above it? I just can't see this. Sorry.
So in terms of compared to the ground floor above, so the ground floor is here.
Yeah, I can't see that. Sorry. The dimensions are not.
Can't see.
They're on the website, so I'll go to there. Let's see if we can.
if it's useful, as the ground floor is 16 metres deep. So the floor above, obviously, when they're constructing this basement, they're going to build the ground floor off the basement floors. It's going to be a similar size. That's why they're doing this. So that's why they're squaring it off. So they build the ground floor and the first floor above a very similar size.
Worrying about the basements coming too close to the edge of the external building upstairs. That's the query.
So I think structurally, you're going to have a basement which will have its foundations, and then the ground floor.
I've built them, I know what they're like. I just want to know what the difference is between external measurement of the house above it and the basement size underneath.
Very similar, I would imagine. From what the plans I've seen, it should be almost exactly the same.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? No comments? Okay. Yes, Councillor Wood.
For the first time, I think we're seeing a Brexit development. The developers obviously wanted to provide a number of three-bedroom houses, and now they're coming back wanting to add a basement and add an extra floor to the bottom because they didn't think they'd be able to make enough money with property prices going down as they are because of the threat of Brexit.
It was already in, David. The basement was already in the original application. It's not an addition. It's just the extension of the basement.
The extension of the basement, yeah, to make the floor area of the entire dwelling slightly larger. But anyway, the point is that it's already an existing development which is being built, and they want to just make it a little bit bigger to make a little bit more room, and I don't have a problem with it.
Anybody else want to say anything? Okay, going to move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. And those against? Not voting. So the recommendation is carried. We now move on to Deacon House, which is 10 Atherton Drive. We have no speakers for this application.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is located at the end of the cul-de-sac known as Atherton Drive. The site comprises a chalet bungalow with associated garaging and parking area and garden. It's within the Wimbledon North conservation area and is adjacent to a greater use of building to the south-east. The site surrounding consists of other residential plots. The proposal itself is an extension to the dwelling on the west elevation, extension with a depth of 7.3 metres, height of 8.1 metres and width of 8.1 metres. The extension will provide additional accommodation comprising games room at ground floor and bedroom and bathroom at first floor. So talking you through the plans, the actual extension is here. So that's the ground floor plan. And at first floor is this here. This is the existing plan. So the extension coming in here off this elevation where it's dark black, coming out here. Again, existing floor plans, existing elevations. So in terms of where it's going, it's coming from here. This was the previous ground floor plan where they were showing some trees to be removed, however these are to be retained. That's for the first plan I showed you. Turning to the elevations. So at the moment, the dwelling the roof comes down like this. So this is the extension here coming out with a side facing door window. That door window will serve a bathroom, so it's to be obscurely glazed to prevent overlooking. At the rear, two windows here, internal facing small roof terrace, which actually replaces a bigger roof terrace that's currently on the site. So just a block plan to show you context where it is in relation to neighbouring properties. Some site pictures. It's the extension coming off this elevation here, coming to about here. Again, just showing the existing position on the site. So a lot of this made up soil here will be removed and something similar created further on. Sending towards here. That is a TPO tree. Our tree officer has been in close inspection of this scheme. You'll note in the planning history as well that these extensions have been considered before by the planning committee back in March, where they included basements the schemes for the extensions but without basements. That's just showing the boundary treatment. All these trees are to be retained on site. That's the properties front elevation. That's just a picture that the agent sent in for us to show the planning committee. Really just show there is existing roof terrace here, which actually will be shielded by the extension, and just roughly where the extension is going to be set. The mod sheet, members, you'll note we have some additional representations, but we've also updated the planning history as we did grant previous application on the 7th of December. So members, overall, the proposal is considered to be accommodated on site without causing material harm to the conservation area, adjacent listed building, name immunity and flood risk. Thank you.
Questions? No questions? Okay, Councillor Macon.
On the condition, number 10 on page 22, prior to commencement of development, a written scheme of investigation and archaeology shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Surely we should receive that before the application is actually accepted as an application. I don't understand why it's not compulsory submitted, especially since this is a conservation area. Am I talking wrong?
Members, the reason we have proposed this condition is actually it does, following liaising with Historic England on home extensions within these sort of areas, they do come back with written schemes of investigation. So we have imposed that condition on just to help assist and help assist ourselves with the assessment of the scheme. So so that is it's quite a standard condition that we do impose.
Questions? Councillor.
We've received extensive legal opinions to the view that various aspects of this, the decision we're being invited to take tonight would be unsound. Just for the record, I have read all of this. Can I just ask officers to confirm that they're absolutely confident in asking us to take this decision tonight?
Yes, Chair. So the previous scheme was granted to the committee subject to us liaising with our legal services to go through our application. That has now concluded itself, and as you see from the mod sheet, we did grant permission the 7th of December, and the planning committee meeting was in March. So a lot of work has been done through that. With this particular application, it is for extensions to the property only, so we don't need the information up front for basement assessments, that sort of thing. It is for extensions only, and so we're happy with the appropriate information submitted with this application.
Any more questions? Councillor, yes.
In 7.11, it says in the tree in the middle here, only 2 metres of the root protection area of these trees is within the application site, and the proposed extensions are outside this distance. Can you explain what that means? Surely the roots need as much protection as everything that's above ground.
So this is referring to the adjacent trees in 19. So what that's saying is that the root protection areas for those trees does go up to 2 metres within the neighbouring site. However, the proposed extension itself would be outside of that root protection.
May I expand? We are told, the wisdom is, that even parking vehicles on roots damages the roots and damages the trees. can we be assured that there's not going to be significant damage on this?
Chair, so just to make that point clear, the root protection zone is protected. That's what this comments relates to the actual site next door, not the application side. The actual tree, the roots of that tree go into the site within 2 metres, but it doesn't go underneath the extension anyway, so it's absolutely protected.
Councillor T.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back on the question by Councillor Southgate, just reading the solicitor's letter, it says that there's a lot of information missing, such as cross-sections, reports. So has all that information now been provided and has it been distributed to the residents or neighbours?
Thank you. Yes, so I've been through that letter. A lot of the information, such as a flood risk assessment, basic impact assessment, that sort of thing, is not required for this type of application. They're also mentioning the lack of a heritage statement. For householder applications within conservation areas, if it's not a listed building, we generally don't ask for a heritage statement. A design access statement maybe, but not a heritage statement. It's generally geared towards listed buildings. The listed building in question is number 21 here. The extension itself is extended that way of the property. As I said before, the previous scheme, which did include a garage over here and basement accommodation, has all been considered previously in terms of the setting listed building as well. So we are happy with the information that we have got.
I did mention at the beginning, before the meeting, that I think it was Nadine and Chris Rabbo, all the information they put through has been taken into account. Any other questions? Comments? Move to the vote. Okay, those in favour of the development, please show. 8. Those against, not voting. Are you voting or not voting? You're not voting. Those in favour, please show. Wake up. Those against, not voting. 1. The recommendation is carried anyway. Thank you. So we now move on to agenda item 8, which is Sterling House.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located on the junction of Walpole Road and Court Hope Villas. It comprises a detached office building with undercroft parking. The site's surroundings consist of residential plots. The application itself proposes an extension to the existing building of the east elevation, an extension with a depth of 5 metres, height of 9 and width of 3.9. The extension will provide additional office accommodation over 3 floors, totalling 53.5 square metres, and the proposed materials will match the existing building with design to match as well. So talking you through the plans, existing on the left, proposed on the right. So the proposed is the pink here, just showing the extension. That's the undercroft parking plan. So ground floor plan, extension coming up here and here. You'll note it's not as far deep as the existing rear building plan. During the application process, it was originally submitted much deeper up to the boundary edge. What we did was to get amendments, and it's been reduced in scale to assist with that boundary to the north. In terms of design, so what this is showing here is the previous commission, which hasn't been built yet, is that top floor here. So currently on site it's just this level, and the proposed extension is here. So from the side, as I said earlier, it's set back from the rear building line depth and set down from the approved roof extension plans, which haven't been built. So site photographs, for example, the extension is coming in this section here. So this is the building here. It's infilling this gap here, but being set back from that rear building line. Neighbouring properties, this is a house of modern occupation, but we have sought amendments to reduce the depth to assist with the impact on these neighbouring property. In fact, I think the original scheme submitted did include top floor accommodations, fourth floor accommodation to match the previous approved scheme. That's now been reduced. So from the road, the extension would be set behind this building line here. So you would see part of it coming out, but set behind that building line. So overall, Chair, the proposals considered satisfactorily accommodate on site without causing harm to every amenity and the character of the area. So also recommend officially granted.
Thank you. Questions? Any questions? Comments? Councillor Deacon.
So when this first came to plan about a year ago, everybody said that the additional floor was acceptable, and I didn't agree because it was potentially that they could have made it a lot bigger at the time, and I don't think it would have all gone through as one. And because this is right next to housing, I don't find that the 3.9 metre width and the depth is acceptable to the people behind, because we're literally talking a couple of metres before somebody's home is there. The original building was built because it was in sympathy with the road at Hawthorpe Villas, and I think by having two applications here, they managed by stealth to get a much bigger building, which I think is unacceptable to people living in this road. I do understand that the officers met with the applicant, as you said, and have reduced that part somewhat. I don't think that goes far enough. I think we need to think about the people living in that road, and I would say reject this on bulk and massing, and then come back with something that is acceptable to the local people.
Any other comments? Councillor Morden.
It's already an existing fairly big-ish building, albeit next to residential areas, but very, very close to the centre of Wimbledon, which is mostly a business, commercial, office, retail area. I think allowing more office space, allowing more jobs and more commerce into the area should be a very good thing, and I would absolutely support it.
Yeah.
The extra floor has been built, unless that scaffolding is something significantly different, which I'd be surprised if it was.
Apologies, I was just taking that from my case officer's site pictures, but I'll speak them to
The additional floor has been built.
Yes. Well, unless they put scaffolding up for another reason at a very high level, I don't think they have. The reason that, as I said to you at the beginning, I'm sorry to bore, if this had all gone through together, it would have been unacceptable. This was done deliberately, in my opinion, because they knew they would not have got it through. And I think that there's office space, absolutely, but this is in a residential road. This is not in the centre of Wimbledon. It is not deemed the centre of Wimbledon on a local plan, although it may be one day. This is a residential road, and I think we should put the residents on at least equal footing and reject it.
I received an email from the Chief Executive Officer of the company, I presume, who owns the building. So are they going to be occupying the additional office space, or is it going to go to market?
I don't know who the future occupants would be, but it is you look at the space gained, it's a bit more additional circulation space for the office for each floor. So just punching it.
Any other comments? No? Move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Those against? And the application is successful, its recommendation. We move on to agenda item 9, which is a tree preservation order at 7 Oak Way, Rains Park.
Thank you, Chair. If you just draw your attention to the screen, you can see the location of this particular tree in a second when I drag it down. It's set within residential gardens here, but you see it is visually seen from the side road. If we scroll further down, you'll see it's an extremely attractive very large tree, very large 150-year-old oak tree. Interestingly, I would draw your attention to the objector's tree surgeon in paragraph 5.1, where the tree surgeon has said this is a magnificent tree which is probably 150 years old and we would be unwilling to fell it. And so that's the objector to this TPO. So we are recommending it's confirmed. Thank you.
Do we need a discussion? Can we agree? Okay, thank you. We move on to planning appeals. This is an item to note. 2 dismissed, 2 agreed. Can we note that? And enforcement. Again, to note, but if you've got any issues around enforcement, can you raise them now? Anything? No? Thank you. I declare this meeting over at 8:15. It's got to be an absolute record. Really, I don't ever remember such a short meeting. Gosh. Do you know what? I've just realised normally I bring mince pies in, wouldn't I? But I completely forgot. Completely swamped at the moment.